All right, so there are no in and out privileges. There are radical leftists outside, so so be careful. So our next guest is clearly someone many of you are familiar with, and who many outside these doors are familiar with. He is someone who time and time again has stood up to the media elites in this country, in particular the CBC, who are using your money to fund and spread Marxist propaganda. Well, we're not going to let them do that anymore, because now we have a voice in the media, a voice that's speaking on behalf of us, the Canadians who are elected officials, our bureaucrats, and the establishment mainstream media would rather silence and forget. Those days are done, and that is thanks to someone I'm proud to call boss, the rebel commander, Ezra Levant. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Mac. Appreciate it. Thanks to Generation Screwed and the taxpayers for inviting me. I appreciate that. Lots of rebels here in the house. Give me a show of hands. Who's here? Right on. Well, it's great to see a lot of rebels here. And students supporting free speech. Who's part of that organization? Outstanding, outstanding. I want to let you know that when we covered one of the students supporting for free speech protests at U of T, where Professor Peterson was there, I was so deeply impressed by not just the articulate exposition of the reasons for free speech, but the courage to lean into the hurricane when it would be so easy to lean back or not even to show up. In fact, that very protest is where we found one of our newest stars, Jay Faiza. I just saw, who is that guy standing up against the hurricane? I got to meet that fella. Now he's working for us. I want to tell you, we're growing like crazy at the Rebel, and I would like to hire more people from students supporting free speech at the Rebel, because I already know all I need to know about you. You believe in freedom, you believe in the right to debate an issue, and if you can be for freedom at the academy with that kind of abuse, I already know you've got courage. So I know some of you just from watching you through our videos and on Facebook, but I would love to have more students supporting free speech working at the Rebel. You're doing good work on campus, but imagine if you can get on video and have 10,000, 100,000, 250,000 people. And some of Jay's videos have had more than 100,000 views. So come work with us. We can talk about how to do that later. The people outside, if you ask them, would say they're against fascism. They would say they're against Nazism. And if you ask them to define that, they would sort of stumble. And I think they define it, and there's this movement on right now, to punch a fascist in the face, punch a Nazi. And that's sort of funny, because I mean, they're here in part because I'm here. And I'm actually a Jew. If you didn't pick that up from Ezra Isaac Levant, and they want to punch me in the nose, and we're here having a conversation, and you can agree or disagree, and there's some questions, and you can do whatever. So here we got a meeting at a university, a house of learning. There's a diverse array of people here, students. I'm a Jew who wants to talk about things, and you got people dressed in black with flags of anarchy, wearing handkerchiefs to cover their identity, trying to bust down those doors to do me harm, and they're calling themselves anti-fascists? I think they call fascists. I think it's anyone they want to punch. It's not that they find a Nazi and want to punch them. It's they find someone they want to punch and call them a Nazi, because it doesn't make a lot of sense. But there's a mania going on right now because those people outside, now I believe they are paid protesters, professional protesters, and I don't say this as some insult or aspersion. I actually know some of them from covering protests around Toronto and other cities. I mean, I'll just pick one name. I saw Bailey Lamont out there. I first met Bailey in Hamilton when she was protesting against an oil pipeline. I mean, Bailey goes around and is a professional protester. I mean, you go to one protest and you meet all these interesting characters. And then you go to a completely different protest. You go to Occupy Wall Street, you go to Idle No More, you go to Black Lives Matter, which is mostly white in Toronto. You go to, I went to an Idle No More protest. It was about 100 people, and there were only about 3 Aboriginal. Well, there's a shock. There's a complete shock. You know what? Given that they are fascist outside, I think that they want to burn the place down, but I'm going to make the guess that that's a false alarm designed to stop the speech, and unless I'm instructed by a fire marshal to leave, I'm going to keep on talking. I mean, when was the last time you were in a group of people that thought pulling the fire alarm to get out of a test was cool? Is that like grade 4? That's where these folks are, these anti-fascists. You know, there's a mania out there. I don't know if those of you who are rebels probably saw the video. It's been watched more than 1.3 million times. We sent our Alberta bureau chief, Sheila Gunn-Reid, to cover the Women's March in Edmonton. And Sheila, as you may know, is a woman, and she went to report it. And she very calmly was reporting from the march, and someone realized that she was with the rebel. Hey, boss.
Sorry for bothering you.
Yeah, hi.
Staff Sergeant Cascanet.
Nice to meet you.
We have an active fire alarm, so we have to clear the building.
Really?
Excuse me. As soon as we clear the fire alarm, fire department will come and clear it, then we'll try to get you back in. But we don't know if it's a real fire or not, so we have to take precautions. So what does that have to do with it? Okay, guys, fire alarm just went off. We have to clear it. We need you to exit through these doors.
Guys, listen, these guys, the police here, they're protecting us. They're doing what we asked. And I told you I would leave if a fire marshal said to leave. The cop is speaking in the place of the fire marshal. We'll continue this speech outside. All right, or we'll come back. So I'm going to continue this speech outside, and let's do what the officer says.
Are those criminals out?
What's your name? Justin. Hi, Justin. How are you?
I wouldn't have the right to call themselves anti-fascists. I think if they knew any history, they know.
I'm telling you, we're doing the safety of everybody in the building and the building. Right? It's a fire alarm. Well, that's fine. You're not a firefighter, sir.
The Women's March in Edmonton.
Everybody, come on, let's go.
Alberta Bureau Chief.
You're not a firefighter, so relax, pal.
It was a women's march for women's rights.
Over to your left.
And yet there was a left-wing activist.
You know, you guys, we're never protected. Our side is never protected.
He punched her in the face
We're evacuating the
at
whole
a women's march. A shot hit
It's called fire in a public place where there was no fire. That's criminal.
Once we get it cleared, we'll get you back in the building.
by these left-wing activists surrounding him. One of them said, "Sheila, are you okay?" One of them said, "Are you okay? Can I help you?" Not one. Not one of them called security or police. What they did instead was scurry the criminal away and block Sheila. These are enemies. The same way that these protesters are anti-fascists. It's irrelevant. The only thing feminist about them is their use of And so what that's done is all of a sudden old taboos are broken. There's someone in power who can say things you're not supposed to say. And I'm not saying you have to agree with everything Donald Trump says. It's hard to. But the fact that he dares say things and doesn't back down when he's told to shut up, it used to be that you landed a satellite on a comment, you're a sexist, misogynist, racist, whatever. The shirt was actually given to him by a female friend who made it. But you see my point. This great man with this great accomplishment, because he wasn't just perfect in his political fashion, his sartorial fashion wasn't perfect. His career was dashed. His career was dashed. You know, Brendan Ike of Mozilla, because he gave a donation 10 years ago to a campaign about gay rights, and he was on the wrong side of the issue. Well, actually, both Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton were on the same side of the issue back then that he was. He was drummed out of his company. You see what I mean? You're not even allowed to disagree anymore. You're not even allowed to say the wrong phrase. I mean, if you say Indian instead of Aboriginal, you're in trouble. Well, guess what? It's not Aboriginal anymore, it's First Nations. Oh, you think First Nations? What are you, some sort of racist? It's indigenous now. Do you see my point? All these word traps. It's like if a cop pulled you over, there's 1,000 things maybe he could find in your car or on your person and charge you with something. And that's the word police and the thought police that these, quote, anti-fascists are doing. And the reason they're in total freak-out mode is because it's being broken. And this big, powerful, noisy guy who refuses to blink is speaking thought that he's not supposed to. Thoughts that in Orwell, it was 52% of them, or whatever the number was. Then it's Donald Trump. It may be other places in Europe too. And in Canada, what I see is because we have not yet had that opening up of the conversation that they did in the UK and they are in the US, I think our hard left activists are trying to shut it down before we have a chance. I think there was a horrific mass murder in Quebec City 6 days ago. It was horrific. 6 innocent people murdered, 19 wounded. Terrible. We need to know more about that crime. Police do not call it terrorism, which is unusual. There's other questions that will be answered at trial. It's a terrible crime and should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. But that is being used, I believe, as a pretext to crack down on what they call Islamophobia.
Yes.
Now, Islamophobia, if you look at the word, it means fear of Islam. And I think there are some reasons to be critical of, or skeptical of, or frankly, sometimes to fear Islam. Not every Muslim, but the ideology, the religion, the philosophy of Islam, especially some of its more enthusiastic forms. And I believe that we should be able to criticize any ideology, any ism, what Christianity included, Judaism for sure, any socialism, communism, capitalism. And of course, in the academy, we should have those most rollicking debates possible. And I don't think there should be any one religion that is immune to skepticism or to be afraid of it. I think that, in fact, the real Islamophobes are the ones who are so terrified of Islam that they have a sort of Stockholm syndrome. And they say, just don't make any sudden moves lest we get it. Don't, And I think all these Western liberal concepts, like separation of mosque and state, it's not there. Can we go back in? Oh yeah, sure, I'll take that. Is that any better?
We love you!
Well, thanks, Jay. Feelings mutual. Jay, I'm sick of your anti-black racism. Jay, we saw Jay at that Students in Support of Free Speech rally, and I knew anyone who would lean into the hurricane was my kind of guy. But let me say this about Islamophobia. It is the pretext by which I believe we're going to see a crackdown on free speech, on media, on public meetings, by simply labeling any discussion about the #1 issue facing the West these days as bigoted, intolerant, and more than that, illegal. See, I don't mind if people call me names. That's fine. I call names occasionally too. You dish it out, you should be able to take it. People don't want to watch The Rebel, that's fine. Don't click on over. But I think we're moving somewhere new. And that is, you're going to see the banning of these contrary thoughts. Now, if you think that I'm just being conspiratorial or a conspiracy theorist, no. In fact, I read in the CBC the other day that in Quebec they've hired 55 police, amongst whose duties is scanning social media.
Shame.
Twitter, Facebook, for private conversations. And in fact, there was a charge in Quebec just the other day. Mr. Padula is his name, who was just tweeting, and he's actually a liberal. He's actually sort of a social justice warrior, but he wasn't very sophisticated in his phrasing. And in his argument, he said something, oh, what are you going to do, kill all the refugees? This guy's a liberal, but he was charged with police for inciting hatred, and he's out on bail. One of his conditions is a ban on accessing the internet. This is just some guy who was tweeting to some other guy. I went to this guy Padula's Twitter feed. I think he's got 75 followers, half of whom are spam bots. But the police want to set the precedent. In fact, the police boss was quoted in the CBC saying, it's to set a precedent, it's to put people on notice. And the CBC quoted Julius Gray, this great civil liberties lawyer, who said the lesson is be very bland. No, I'm sorry, Julius, that ain't the lesson. The lesson is freedom of speech is something you have to give your opponent if you want it for yourself. If you want free speech for your left-wing idea, fair enough. We get free speech for our ideas too, and you know what? If there's an idea that's false, let truth and falsehood grapple. There we go. Let truth and falsehood grapple. Is there any truth that can't overcome a lie with enough time? And the thing is, you don't know what's true or false unless the ideas grapple first. And these so-called anti-fascists are dictionary definition fascists. Hey, hey, ho, ho, you fascists gotta go. 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 Hey, hey, I got another one. Oh, okay, I gotta come up with a good one. It's not a rhyme.
Go back to your speech.
Oh, I'll go back to my speech. I was enjoying the chat there.
Go back to your
You know.
Don't give them the airtime. They don't deserve it.
All right. Back to my speech. Thank you. I'm just riffing.
Can you address that the CBC issue? You know, they are paid by us, taxpayers.
Look, here's the thing.
Completely left.
I want to tell you one quick story.
University's shutting down the event right now. Your speaker's about to be unplugged. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Let them speak.
See how the left treats me in the speech?
Yeah, you know what? Here we have a Jew with friends who are black and Chinese and every possible background being shut down by a bunch of racist, anti-Semite fascists. I'm sorry, that's what it is. All right, I think my mic's being cut off. Let me wrap it up by saying this. I want to tell you a story about freedom of speech, and I'll just end with this story. And I want to show you how dangerous it is to get into the business of censorship. In 2000, 2005, a liberal in Denmark named Kare Blutgen wanted to do a child's illustrated Quran. Like a child's illustrated Bible. Sounds good? Sounds interesting? I'd read it. And he tried to get it illustrated, but no cartoonist would illustrate it. They said, we don't want to die. So this made some news in a newspaper called Politiken. And a fellow Dane said, that ain't Denmark, we're not Saudi Arabia. So he wrote to every editorial cartoonist in Denmark, offered him $80 and said, draw Mohammed in any way you want, positive, negative, whatever. And 12 cartoonists who wanted the cash did. And he published them in a newspaper called the Jyllandsposten. And that's it, nothing. If you look at the cartoons, some of them don't really say anything. One of them was sort of stylized like the Olympics. One of them made fun of Kare Blutgen and the newspaper trying to be sort of media hounds. Nothing happened. And the world went on. And then a couple of imams took those cartoons and went on tour through the Arab world showing those cartoons, trying to whip up anger. And nothing happened. In fact, one of the largest newspapers in Cairo published a cartoon. Nothing happened. No one cared. But then all of a sudden, two things changed. Syria assassinated the leader of Iran, Rafiq Hariri, and the leader of Lebanon, Rafiq Hariri. And Iran was discovered to have a nuclear program. Two despotic countries that wanted to change the channel. And so they had spontaneous protests in Tehran and Damascus against cartoons that had never been shown in Tehran and Damascus, in cities where there is no such thing as spontaneous political protests. They burned down the Danish embassy in Damascus. And suddenly, every journalist in the Western world was terrified and brought upon themselves this self-censorship. More so than any court-ordered publication ban. And I understand that, because if you're afraid, you know, do you really need to die like they died at Charlie Hebdo? But here's the point. What happens if every single newspaper in the West had run those cartoons just as proof that you can? Not because you necessarily support them. Well, I happened to be running a magazine at the time, a small magazine in Western Canada called the Western Standard, and we ran those cartoons, not on the front page, not in a lascivious way. We just wanted to show people what all the fuss was about so they could make up their own mind. And I think they're dancing the hora. Let me wrap up my story this way. We published the cartoons, and the number one reaction from people was, oh, is that it? Because the rest of the media had self-censored. And when was the last time you saw the CBC or the Toronto Star censor anything that was obscene? They love obscene things. Especially they love things that, you know, there was a piece of installation art called Piss Christ. It was a crucifix in the photographer's own urine. And that was in the New York Times. So imagine if the New York Times and CNN would not show a cartoon. That's got to be a pretty obscene cartoon. That's got to be a pretty diabolical, outrageous cartoon. And when people actually saw the cartoons with their own eyes, they said, oh my God, that's it. So the very fact that the media did not show it imbued them with more mystique and more power. So we showed it, and we started getting letters to the editor from Muslim Canadians saying, thank you. I remember this one letter from Rawa Khalid, who said, I did not leave an Islamic hellhole, that's her words, and cross the ocean to have Sharia law follow me to Canada. That's what she said. So we were pleased, and the rest of the media said, oh, that looked easy. Maybe we should have done that, although no other media in the country published it. But then we got hit with 2 human rights complaints. And I remember the wording of the law, 100-day process. Under Section 2, actually, or 3 of the Alberta Human Rights Act, it was against the law to publish anything, quote, likely to expose a person to hatred or contempt. Well, what does that mean, likely to, in the future? So it's a future crime? I mean, what does that mean? So you're prosecuting me for publishing something that maybe one day will do what? Will cause hard feelings. That's what hatred or contempt are. So it's not even a thought crime like in Orwell, it's a feelings crime. Could you imagine? Now the thing is, we don't want feelings of hatred or contempt a lot, but they're natural human feelings. If you never feel hatred or contempt, you're not normal in your personality. We have love and hate and respect and contempt, and we just got to learn to control those things. If you don't have a hateful reaction to certain things, you're not human, I put it to you. We just have to learn how to deal with that. If all we had to do in life was pass the Love Each Other Act, well, we would have done so long ago. And so I was prosecuted, really the first blasphemy case in over 100 years in Canada, for publishing something likely to expose a person to hatred or contempt. What does that even mean? That no proof is necessary because it's just a likely to. It's like that movie Minority Report with Tom Cruise, where they arrest you, and I didn't do anything yet. Yeah, but you will. After 900 days, the case was dropped, but not before enormous costs were inflicted upon me. And again, that's like that Quebec police chief saying, this is just pour encourager les autres, to set an example for the others. We'll put you through a 900-day prosecution, Ezra. And so every other journalist in Canada can say, oh, 900 days. $100,000 in legal fees. All right, message received. Maybe I won't show those cartoons. Maybe I'll skip the, the fact that the local mosque has a sermon that's anti-Semitic or anti-women or anti-this or that. Maybe I won't report it because I don't need 900 days in the Human Rights Court and $100,000 in legal fees. It's a precedent. Let me close by telling you the 3 reasons why we should hear things, why we should allow things to be said that we find hateful. I find things hateful. I find those so-called anti-fascists hateful. They're full of hate. They want to get me. They want to physically hurt me. We saw what they did in Berkeley the other day. They burned the place down.
Flagpoles.
But let me give you 3 reasons why I think those fascist assholes should have their free speech, even though I hate them. Or they hate me, more accurately. Let me tell you why I think even those Black Bloc, Soros, fascists should be allowed to speak. And I'll give you 3 reasons. And I didn't come up with these 3 reasons. I actually heard them from Gilles Marchildon, who used to be the executive director of EGAL, the gay rights group. And here's why he said he didn't want to ban anti-gay speech. He said, number 1, I want to know who the haters are.
Put them in the open.
So these haters out there, I want to know who they are. Now, they don't want me to know. That's why they got the masks on, right? But if there's a hater, whether they hate blacks or hate Jews or hate this or hate that, I want to know who they are. Don't you? The second reason is, well, that's a teachable moment, as Barack Obama would say. Okay, there's a moment of hate. Let's teach the next generation why what they're doing is wrong. And if you don't allow the hate to come there and allow that crisis, you can't solve and resolve that issue. Let's say you hear a bigoted comment. Okay, now you could explain to everyone why that's wrong. And if you didn't hear it, you miss that opportunity because you're pushing it down, you're pushing it underground. I put it to you that free speech is an outlet. If you try and tamp that down, it's going to come out some other way, maybe even in violence. If you don't let people mouth off safety valve, it might come out in violence. I think there's a correlation between countries with censorship and countries with political violence. But the third reason that Gilles Marchildon had for allowing hate speech is we don't want to outsource our citizenship duties to the government. Here's what I mean by that. Let's say someone makes a bigoted comment at work. Well, what's the normal thing to do? You go up to the guy and you say, that's not how we talk around here. Let me tell you how we are. That's wrong. That you deal with it personally. You put a little bit of your personal skin in the game. You know, you take ownership of your life and around you, and you don't make a federal case out of it, but you solve it in a real way with a little bit of yourself, right? The alternative that they're proposing in these human rights acts and these anti-Islamophobia censorship laws, and these fascists would do, is that you call 911 to some hate finder general who's going to come in and you're going to have a 900-day hearing about what was a stupid racist joke. So instead of dealing with it right there, you absolve yourself of any citizenship duties, any civic duties, and you give it to some cop or some bureaucrat or some lawyer or some busybody who'll get around to it in a year or two, and some whole industry will build. You know what? I would rather deal with little acts of bigotry in my life, take personal ownership of my life and my community and my organizations, my workplace, than just say, oh no, I just called the hate police and they'll be here and they'll make arrests and in 3 years this thing will move through court. Yeah.
I think it makes, like, when you speak to your third point, a very important part of it is that it makes your chief interaction with the state, right? That the client is not between consenting actors.
Right.
It's between you and the state, and it grows the power of that, right?
That's a great point. You know, it's about personal responsibility, it's about personal citizenship, and it's about solving this amongst us rather than handing it over to some partisan and distant and biased bureaucrat who would never care as much as you would.
And a forceful one.
Yeah. Aaron?
Okay, so the university basically said the event's over, so you'd ask us to excuse. I'm not trying to know.
Right.
Off the record.
Right. Sure.
That's my
I think I'm sort of done. I think I'm sort of done my work.
work.
All right, folks. Well, listen, I've enjoyed our brief talk. I think it was important that we spoke in the face of the fire alarm, don't you?
Yes.
I think it was important that we spoke out here, don't you?
Yes.
I think it was important that we called those so-called anti-fascists by their proper name, which is Jew silencing fascists. And I think it was important that we talked a little bit about free speech. I want to thank my friend Aaron Gunn, and I want to congratulate him for his wisdom for putting me last. I do want to say a word about security and the police. I think the police did the right thing with the fire alarm, because although it was a childish move and so obviously a false alarm, I think the police did have the duty to clear the building. I think they did, and I think they were supportive of us, and I think they blocked the fascists, which they didn't do at Berkeley. So I don't have criticism for the Toronto police who were here. In fact, I'm grateful to them for what they did. And it just shows the inability of our fascist foes to debate. Let me close how I opened by saying, if you're here today, especially standing in the cold listening to me rant, then you're my kind of people. You're a bit of a rebel yourself, I might put it to you.
Hey.
And if you're a young person who wants to do more than just, attend an event, if you want to do more than just listen, if you want to affirmatively and proactively do something, well then maybe you have a place with the rebel, because I believe in free speech, and I think that we are the pointy edge of the spear of free speech. I think they're going to come for us with these new censorship rules that they're bringing in. I think it's only a matter of time. If you want to be part of our battle, send me an email to Ezra@therebel.media. And if you want to do a little demo video on your cell phone and upload it to Dropbox or YouTube to send it to me, I'd like to see it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
What are they doing right now? Fucking Nazi, Watch it go back.
All right. So I hope that we can come away from here knowing the true nature of the so-called anti-fascists.
Right over there.
Maybe a few thoughts about the importance of free speech and why we should not outsource our fighting of hate, why we should do it as citizens. And finally, if some of you want to join me, as Jay Fisa joined me, and if others from students in support of free speech want to join me, maybe we can even grow from here and be stronger. They can't pull a fire alarm on YouTube.